want to thank everyone for joining us this afternoon. As you know, the USDA has released numerous nationwide waivers, and we're here to help kind of run through those waivers, and then we want to dedicate the majority of our time to respond to any more questions and questions that you've got regarding the summer food or meal service during this time. Katie's going to be joining me today, and she'll be covering the nationwide waivers, and I will be covering the area eligibility and a waiver in a program called Meals to You. If you have questions, would you please go ahead and chat and type those into the chat box so that everyone can see those, and we'll try to collect those and respond to them then towards the end of the webinar session. I do want to start off by thanking everybody, because your efforts have been absolutely fantastic in ensuring that children still are receiving meals, you know, whether they're not able to get them from their parents at this time, or, you know, restaurants all closed. Everyone's really pitched in and did a fantastic job of getting meals out to the school children. Nebraska has about 433 sites offering food to school kids and other children in the community. So you deserve a big round of applause for those efforts, and we want to thank you for working so hard to accomplish that. So our agenda today is, like I indicated, we're going to talk about the nationwide waivers and how those are working and how you can utilize those. And then also talk a little bit about what I'm calling an implementation survey. And we'll give you more details about that survey, which most of you should have already received. Then I want to talk in detail, because Nebraska has received an area eligibility waiver, which is a little bit different from the nationwide waivers. And so we want to provide some information on why it's different and how it can be used. And then there is a program out there called Emergency Meals to You that's available for rural communities to utilize if they don't have a summer food option. And then, like I said, we want to talk about questions and answers and be here to respond to anything, any of your questions that you may have about these programs. So I'm going to let Katie start off. She's going to talk about the nationwide waivers. And so those are all policy memos that are available under the NDE Nutrition Services webpage under USDA memos. So Katie, I'll turn it over to you.
Sounds good. Thank you, Sharon. And thanks everyone for joining us today. We hope that you'll get some useful information from today, and we look forward to hearing your questions and being able to provide you answers at the conclusion of our presentation. As Sharon mentioned, there have been several waivers issued by the USDA, and most of those have been issued in a COVID-19 child nutrition programs kind of response, and there's been a series of those that have been numbered. The very first waiver issued, though, had a regular policy memo number that you're probably more familiar with, but two of them tie pretty closely together in terms of the way that you're operating your meal service, at least from what we know in most cases. And the policy memo waiver number 1 allowed for mealtime or meal service time flexibilities, not only for the time of day that your meals are being distributed or offered or served, but also for the duration of that meal service. That, along with policy memo SP08-2020, also coded as SFSP04-2020, allowed for non-congregate meal service, which allows your sites to operate utilizing grab and go, delivery, and even drive-through or drive-up type methods of meal service. And both of those are in effect through June 30th, 2020, or until the public health emergency expires, whichever is first. And most of the waivers that have been issued have that same expiration date, June 30th, 2020, or until the expiration of the public health emergency. And we'll make sure to note the one that has an earlier expiration date. But this meal times and non-congregate feeding, those two waivers together, allow for sites to utilize meal distribution for more than 1 day at a time, and guidance says you can distribute meals for up to 1 week at a time in a single distribution event. Go to the next slide, Sharon. Thank you. Waiver number 5 allows for parent, guardian, or adult pickup without a child being present, and sites are not required to utilize the flexibilities issued in this waiver. We will really want to emphasize that your opting in to utilize this flexibility is ultimately a school decision, and we need to make sure you know that we still need to maintain integrity in the program and take steps to ensure that these meals that are provided to the adults, that they actually have an enrolled child in the household in which they live. A couple of ideas that you might consider when it comes to ensuring that this integrity piece of meal service is in place might be requiring advanced sign up to receive meals. That could be incorporated with use of a roster to mark names for those children who've signed up to receive a meal, or parents obviously may be signing children up, but either way, you're somehow collecting some type of information from those families. We've even heard of instances where sites are utilizing a hang tag that can be placed in the rearview mirror of a car, which makes sense. We're trying to minimize personal contact, and that might be one method you could use to somehow ensure that the adults picking up the meals have children at home. You can go to the next slide, please, Sharon. Thank you. So this is the flexibility that I mentioned earlier that has an earlier expiration date. This policy, or this flexibility, is effective through the end of this month. So it's good through 30/30 of 2020. It's waiver number 4, which issues flexibility to serve meals that do not meet meal pattern requirements when needed. So some scenarios or circumstances under which you might need to utilize this waiver's flexibilities would be when you experience any food chain interruptions. Maybe food is spoiled or arrives spoiled, or you experience some sort of spoilage. And then as far as whole grain rich and inclusion of vegetable subgroups goes, that would apply to people continuing to operate the school lunch program, because those two requirements do not exist if you're utilizing the summer food service program and its meal pattern. We want to make sure we emphasize that effort does need to be made to provide an appropriate substitute if your first choice item is not available. We encourage you to consider purchasing locally if possible, or if that would give you a couple of additional options. Make sure you reach out to other distributors. Consider buying in bulk and repackaging, which might be especially important for some produce items that you're unable to procure. An example might be baby carrots that are prepackaged. If you could find a suitable substitute that doesn't require a lot of labor that you could repackage, that might be something to consider as well. And service of 2 of the same component is allowed if you're utilizing the summer food service program and its associated meal pattern. So it is okay with the SFSP to serve 2 different fruit items or 2 different vegetable items. It doesn't have to be one of each. So we want to make sure you're aware of those things related to meal pattern that might make meeting meal pattern a little bit easier for you. As far as milk goes, we want to emphasize that any kind of milk is okay when operating using the summer food service meal pattern. You could serve any kind of flavored milk, skim, low-fat, whole milk. All of those are okay. We also want to make sure you remember that both shelf-stable milk and even reconstituted dry milk would be appropriate ways to meet the fluid milk requirement that is necessary for reimbursable meals, no matter what meal pattern you're offering or utilizing, the school lunch or the summer food service program meal pattern, depending on which of those programs you've continued to operate. You can go to the next slide. Thank you. As far as monitoring flexibilities go, waiver number 10 is issued, and it's specific to those utilizing the summer food service program and operating sites under that program. That waiver issued flexibilities to the on-site monitoring requirements, where it omits the on-site portion of site visits. So as the regulations were or have existed traditionally, you had to complete an on-site visit in the first week just to observe things. So that portion is being waived. There's no first week site visit. The regulations also require a site visit at some point in the first 4 weeks of operation. So the on-site portion of that first 4-week site visit has been waived. However, you are still required to complete a desk review of records for those like production records or delivery tickets and the meal count records that you're maintaining for the program. So someone does need to check up on each of the sites that you're operating to make sure that those records are current and up to date and that they're being completed correctly. The flexibility also says that you may delay that 4-week window for completing reviews if you are going to continue operating your summer food service program through the summer months like May and June. If you're continuing to operate summer into the regular summertime months, then you do not need to complete that first 4-week visit or review of records right now. You can put that off. However, if you know that you're going to stop offering meals through the SFSP at the end of your school year, then you need to make sure that you complete this desk review of records at some point during the first 4 weeks of you utilizing the summer food service program to provide meals. And you can access that site visit form, although not all pieces of it are going to be applicable because of the fact that we have waived the on-site portion of that review. But you can access that through the link on the slide here, and we'll post these slides so you can obviously retrieve this and access that form later. But the form is also available on the SFSP Forms and Resource Center page on our NDE Nutrition Services webpage. We can go to the next one. Thank you. As Sharon mentioned at the top of our webinar today, we do need to collect information that tracks your utilization of each of the waivers we've talked about so far. An email announcing this requirement with a link to the survey asking you to complete was sent on April 10th, and it's due by 5 p.m. on April 24th, 2020. And we will send a reminder email again tomorrow, letting you know you've got 1 week left before the deadline to complete that. And again, like I said, we'll post these slides and you can access the survey link on the link that you see on the slide here. Next slide, please. Thank you. And we wanted to touch on the fresh fruit vegetable program because there has been one policy memo issued related to it. It's SP 12/2020. And based on some of the questions we've received, we just want to highlight a few key points from the memo. Current FFVP sites may serve FFVP at times that operators deem appropriate. So this could be with or without meals. Could include if you're continuing to operate through the school lunch program perhaps, but most of you are probably utilizing open sites through the SFSP, and you can include a separate fresh fruit vegetable item. It's got to be an item in addition to the already required fruit and vegetable items that you have to serve as part of a reimbursable meal. The fresh fruit vegetable serving size must reflect what you would typically provide during the school year or under normal operation. To include the FFVP items in your meal distribution, the children must be present to receive the meals with those FFVP items. And that's a little bit different from the guidance that allows the flexibility for parent pickup. So we want to make sure you understand that if you're utilizing or want to include the FFVP items, you have to have the child present to receive those things, okay? And those FFVP funds can be used through June 30th of 2020 or by the expiration date of the public health emergency, whichever is first. So if you've got FFVP funds that can still be used and it's within your capacity to add those items to your meal distribution, continue doing that, knowing that you have through June 30th to operate that program, and it does not necessarily have to stop when your school year technically ended. That's all I've got, Sharon. You can, go ahead with area eligibility whenever you're ready.
Okay, thanks, Katie.
Mm-hmm.
The area eligibility waiver was approved, or Nebraska was approved for, and it varies from the nationwide waivers in that if schools that want to utilize it, they do have to go through an application process for it. And so that's what we're going to be focusing on for this portion of the webinar. I do want to provide just some background. I know that some of you, summer food is completely new to, and so I'm trying to explain why there was a need for the area eligibility waiver in Nebraska. And so in the summer food program, most of you already know that you can operate as an open site, or you can operate as a closed enrolled program. And the eligibility requirements for an open site is that you have to have at least 50% of your student population eligible for free or reduced meal benefits, or qualify under a census block area, which indicates poverty in the area where the students or the children that live there, the majority, 50%, are free and reduced. And in an open site, you're allowed to serve meals to all children 1 through 18 years of age. So it wouldn't be limited to, it'd be any child in the community, not just those school children. In the summer food enclosed program, the schools do, the site has to prove that they have at least 50% of their program participants eligible for free or reduced meals. And the meals are served to participants that are enrolled in their program. Because of the urgency to make sure that children receive meals and certainly targeting those that are in most need, a lot of our schools fell in the closed enrolled program portion because many of their free and reduced, or many of their schools didn't have the 50% free and reduced population. So they had to go through a few extra steps and a little more work to prove or establish that the students that were receiving their meals or enrolled in their program were actually meeting that 50% requirement. And also had to go through some more hoops as far as, recording their meal counts. Open site, they could just make a slash through a number and just count the number of meals as they were distributed. But with the closed enrolled sites, it was a matter of, having a roster and checking the meals against the roster. And in the end, it could be possible, and when we checked all those meal counts out, that maybe that school might not have met the 50% mark. News gets around and the kids, children in the community start coming, and they maybe have not met that 50% requirement. So the area eligibility waiver is a way for us to ensure that you get your meals reimbursed, all the meals served reimbursed, and it also allows you to do just a typical meal count. So the waiver's available to school food authorities that are currently providing meals, either stayed with the National School Lunch Program because they couldn't meet the 50%, or they're operating as a closed enrolled program under the Summer Food Service Program. It does require an application. The requirement that we're looking for, the information that we're looking for as part of the application process, is to look for local information regarding the economic impact on your community. It was fairly easy to think widespread what the COVID pandemic has done to Nebraska in general, just with unemployment applications, the number of SNAP assistance applications that's been received, looking at revenues, state revenues for tax purposes. So we were able then, based on that statewide information, to request the area eligible waiver, where we could, on a case-by-case basis, review the information and look at local economic impacts and allow then those sponsors that were operating under school lunch or as a closed enrolled program to actually operate as an open site. And so with that local information that we'll gather through the survey, we'll be able to approve your site and allow you to operate as an open site beginning April 1st through the remainder of the school year. Then the last piece I want to talk about is Emergency Meals to You. This was a program, a collaborative program with Baylor University that piloted in Texas, New Mexico, and Alaska. And with the pandemic situation, they have decided to open that program up and allow other rural states to utilize the services. And so, just like the summer food program, the Emergency Meals to You does have eligibility requirements. Schools have to be at least 50% of their enrollment eligible for free or reduced price meals. They have to be closed for at least 4 weeks due to the pandemic. And they do have to fall under the designation of being rural. And Nebraska is pretty much rural. I did go look at this map, and most of the state is the right color, except for the southeast portion and a little bit in the central part of the state. So definitely applicable to our rural state of Nebraska. Also, districts that are not rural can qualify under certain conditions. If there's severe transportation barriers, or if there is difficulty finding a mass caterer that would be able to provide those meals for the state or the area. So the Emergency Meals to You program connects the schools with a vendor that has the capacity to purchase and package and deliver a box of meals containing 10 or more meals. And typically they're thinking it would be 5 breakfasts and 5 lunches. So it's about 2 weeks worth of food. There is a frequently asked question document there that has a link. And we also did send this information out to you in a blast email to everyone about this Meals to You program. Nebraska has had 1 school that has applied. So we do have 1 school that's interested in this program. If you're interested in applying to use the Emergency Meals to You program, the school goes to the website, the Meals to You website, and completes the application. They send that application and to NDE, and we review it and submit it back or send it on to the Meals to You folks and let them know that you qualify for the summer food program. There's an enrollment period where schools do some outreach to their students and let them know of the availability of the program, and they sign up. And then the meal delivery process begins, and it is the one caveat that to consider about this program, however, is that it is just for free and reduced students. So those paid students in a district would not be eligible to receive the meals. It would just be targeted towards the free and reduced students only. And currently, our understanding is that the Emergency Meals to You would only be available during the COVID pandemic stage. Probably would not be available for the normal summer food operation between May and August, or May, June, and July. Okay. We're ready, I believe, for the questions and answer portion. And I know that Sean's done a bang-up job of answering questions already.
Sharon, a question did come in that hopefully you and Katie can address is, a lot of sponsors would like to extend after the school year, and they're looking for, can they or can't they at this point?
Do you want me to take that? From what we know,
Yes.
You can certainly chime in. If you're operating an open site right now, then yes, you can continue that as long as you want to through the summer months up until school resumes again in August. If you're operating a closed enrolled site through the SFSP, it's my understanding right now that the USDA is aware that that is a question that many schools have, but they have not issued a response on whether or not that will be allowed.
Sean, are you going to read all the questions, or do you want us to go to the chat box?
She's answered quite a few of them here.
Okay.
One says our school board voted something to do online learning. The last day for online learning is May 15th. Can we feed past that date? And what we know right now is you can if you are currently operating an open SFSP site. If your site has to operate utilizing the closed enrolled rules, then you may be able to consider utilizing or applying to use the Area Eligibility Waiver, which would turn your site into an open SFSP site. And in that case, it is my understanding that you would be able to operate beyond your May 15th last day of school date. So for Patty, she asked or said that they filled out their summer food service program application to indicate that they'd continue through the end of the school year. And if you want to operate beyond that, and then you're allowed to do it if you're an open site or you utilize the Area Eligibility Waiver, then we would ask that you make a revision to your site application or whatever applications, maybe you have more than one site operating, to reflect your updated anticipated end date. Brenna has a question. Do you see her question there, Sharon and Sean? It says, after the June 30th, 2020 end date, do you need to change our application or will there be a new application? It's just a matter of changing the one you have in the system. And I think, Brenna, your sites operate as open sites, I believe. And if the meal time and non-congregate feeding waivers happen to expire on or before that date, then we would obviously issue some guidance and technical assistance about what would need to be changed, if anything, in your site applications. And off the top of my head, I could think that if your breakfast and or lunch meal service times are not accurately reflected in what you currently have in your site application, and right now it probably isn't because we've got that mealtime flexibility in place, then we would want you to bring those up to date with the most accurate information. I hope that answers your question, Brenna. Sam Dunn has a question about not meeting the 50% free or reduced eligibility requirement for the SFSP. Can you still serve students with or without charge? So I hope I answer your question well. Sean and Sharon can certainly chime in, but if you don't meet the 50% free or reduced threshold, then you probably would have stayed with the school lunch program as a way to serve meals. But if you chose to do the summer feeding program, I think you're probably guided towards doing an initial sign up survey type thing to assess what the need was and to determine if half or more of the children who signed up to receive meals qualified for free or reduced price meals. And if half of those who signed up to receive meals from you are free reduced eligible, then you're correct that all of the kids would be served meals free of charge. If that doesn't answer your question, Sam, reply in the chat box again and I can try to do a better job for you.
I have a good question from Sheila Parr.
Mm-hmm.
We had a truck delivery earlier this week. Not all items arrived, so we cannot provide lunch with our meals. Will we still be able to submit breakfast meals provided? Absolutely. Those breakfasts, if they had all the components, are definitely reimbursable. And I guess in the question of the lunch, there also is the meal pattern waiver. So if you were able to even provide at least 3 components, I'm not sure there would be even a hardcore. Sean might chime in on that one too. But if you were able to provide significant enough meal with other provisions, like we talked earlier, maybe providing 2 vegetables or 2 fruits instead, or maybe 1.5 sandwiches, something that would be significant enough to make a meal, that we would just then have you complete the waiver for the meal pattern. Let us know what foods were substituted or were not available. I'll let Katie and Sean add on to that if I feel like my response might not have been quite complete.
I'll add on. The waiver request is if you have exhausted all of your efforts to try and meet meal pattern. For many of the components, there are comparable things. So if your order just didn't come in, was there anything on hand that you could have substituted that would have met those meal pattern requirements? And so that waiver's really for the extreme case where maybe an example would be you don't have any milk. You expected your milk truck to come in. They didn't come in and it was time to serve. That's when you would complete the waiver request because you just didn't have another option. And they're reviewed on a case-by-case basis. So you can certainly submit a waiver and we'll review it.
Brooke asked where to go to fill out the national waiver or application and where to fill out the state waiver. And you've asked a really good question that I think a lot of people are wondering the answer to, Brooke. The waivers that I talked about for meal service times, non-congregate feeding, parent pickup, the monitoring for the SFSP sites, and meal pattern are all just blanket waivers already issued to you if you want to utilize the flexibilities issued within those policy memos. And the only thing we need to have you do is just let us know whether or not you're utilizing those. And that's what that survey link that we provided to you on one of the slides during the portion that I presented on will help us gather. So like I said, we'll send that out to all of the authorized reps, claim contacts, and food service directors again tomorrow in case you lost track of that. And hopefully whoever receives it can share it with the appropriate person to make sure each school provides the feedback that we need. So you don't need to apply. You can just let us know whether or not you're using them. There's not an application process except for the area eligibility waiver that Sharon presented on. That one does require the application process. And so there's a survey or form we're asking you to fill out, which is available on the website and was also linked to on the slides that Sharon covered. And so this PowerPoint will be posted on the website. So you'll be able to access it either directly from the website pages or from within the slides once we get them posted.
Katie, I'll take the next one.
Please, yeah, thank you.
This came from Chris, and it's on waiver number 5. We are an open site. Do we need to have something to ensure that our parents have children enrolled? That is a great question, Chris. As an open site, you're eligible to serve children between the ages of 1 through 18. And the waiver 5 allows that parents or household members can pick up the meals for children, that children do not have to be present. But you do want to ensure that those meals are actually going to needy children. And so you might ask the household member that comes to pick up the meals who the meals are for. It's really at the school's discretion on what they request. But the waiver does allow that household members, adults, can pick up meals for children. But we do want to make sure, once again, that they're going to needy children.
I also heard from a school that when a parent came and there was some, maybe little red flags, an adult came and there's little red flags that maybe there might not be children in the household, that they went ahead and gave them the meal, but then they asked them the next time to bring the child with them. In this case, the adult that came to the site was clearly dressed for work as like a painter or a mechanic, and it was pretty questionable whether they were just on their lunch hour and decided to come by and pick up a free meal. So you do have that flexibility to say, okay, we'll give you the meal this time, but next time please bring a child with you, which I thought was a good idea.
Certainly. Sue asked, if an open site continues to operate beyond the school year, please clarify which waivers end. Well, right now we know that meal service times, non-congregate feeding, SFSP monitoring requirements, and parent pickup are issued or effective through June 30th, 2020, or the expiration of the public health emergency, whichever of those is first. So what we know right now is those are probably in effect through June 30th, and the USDA would issue additional guidance if that deadline happens to be extended. So for now, we know that those are the things you're going to probably be able to continue to use through the end of June.
The next question is, how do we handle not being able to find fruit and vegetables to purchase for our program? If you have exhausted all of your avenues to find fruits and vegetables, then you need to complete the waiver for the meal flexibility of meeting meal pattern. But, you know, once again, you know, you need to, there's a lot of different fruits and vegetables and a lot of different forms of fruits and vegetables that can be provided. So we would just ask that you look into all those different options before you would request a waiver. And once again, the waivers are granted on a case-by-case basis and for specific dates and time. As supply and demand catches up, you know, hopefully that there will be more availability from vendors, but it's difficult to tell right now. So it's just going to be on a case-by-case basis, and there is that waiver flexibility.
Lynn asked a good question about what information is needed to complete the area eligibility waiver, so I might let Sharon answer that. But the second part of your question, Lynn asks or indicates that the only part that's visible now is the first screen of the survey. So I just now went and checked it, and the first screen does kind of give an introduction to the waiver and why it might be used or issued or utilized. And then if you click the next button right under it, it takes you to another screen where we gather information about the school or sponsoring agency, contact information for the person completing the screen. I'm sorry, the application. And then there's another next button under there, and that takes you to like a short answer page where you would provide some specific examples if possible. So I'll let Sharon speak to the things that you would probably, that you could provide if you wanted to apply to utilize that waiver.
Yeah, that's a good question, Lynn. One of the requirements of us even receiving this waiver was that USDA was pretty adamant about us collecting individual or specific information related to the communities that are requesting the waiver and what specific or more local income impacts there were, or economic impacts there were. So an example that I like to throw out, they talked about one of the things that was submitted was Grand Island, Nebraska. They closed Fauner Park for the racing. Well, that impacted about 200 people as far as their wages and their furlough, you know, layoffs. So if there's, you know, factory closing, business closures, you could even look at some of your meal count data to say, okay, on, you know, March, the first week in March when we started our program, we were serving 200 kids and now we're serving 400 kids. To me, that's an indicator that economic conditions have gotten worse in the area. So we're looking for anything that's related. It can be agricultural, it can be businesses, it can be factory, industry. You know, certainly right now, I know there's a lot of information out there about the agricultural world where grain prices are low and so farmers aren't selling their grain. Those types of things are what we're looking for that are more specific to the community that's applying for the waiver. And we're not looking, we're not looking for some certified letter. We're just looking for the news media reported this, or in the article in the Grand Island newspaper, this is what was posted. So those are the kinds of things that we're looking for as far as economic impact. And we're hoping, I think that's the, other than information, contact information, I think that's the only question there is on the survey. Right, Katie?
Yeah, that's correct. So Lynn, I hope that you're able to navigate through the survey, and if you have issues or if anyone else has trouble viewing it, you can find my email address on the website. Hopefully you probably have an old email from me lying around that you can use to reach out to me, because I want to make sure you're able to access it if you need it. We have a question about the area eligibility waiver for 1 to the end of the school year. So Sharon, it's my understanding that that waiver is effective for 1, so the beginning of April would be the way we would kind of classify your site changing from closed enrolled to open. And you asked if it would be extended that to June 30th. It's my understanding that if you get the waiver approved and you can operate an open site, then you can continue that for the duration of the summer. Do you agree?
I'm not sure on that.
Okay.
I didn't, thinking back, I'm not sure if there was a end date on that either.
Okay, we'll check on that and make sure that we'll post that with the other area eligibility waiver information on the Summer Food Service Program webpage.
The next question is, can we print out the information from this webinar today? Katie?
Yeah.
Posted on the website.
Certainly. I can post it as a PDF of the slides as well, so you will be able to use that to print it if you'd like to. Good question.
There's a question regarding the summer food program being for 18 years of age and younger, excuse me. Because they've been contacted for selling meals to senior citizens through the school meals program. Katie, I might let you take that. They can sell adult meals.
That is true. You can sell adult meals, around $4 for lunch and somewhere between $2.50 and $3 for breakfast. But I know Sean had that scenario from a school that she was in. You agree with that?
Well, you have to recover all of your costs in the program, and the rate of reimbursement for the summer food service program for lunch is $4.1525. So you would have to charge at least that amount to your senior citizens to recover all of the costs associated with the program. The program can't support non-program meals, and that's what those meals would be, non-program adult meals.
The next question is about a marked increase in meal service, and that you've had to alter the way your meals are prepared and served to be able to handle that large load. This question is from John, and the ultimate question is, do you need to alter or amend or revise the original application to reflect what you're currently doing at 25 meals per day rather than per week? So yeah, we would advise that you make a revision to that site application to bring that information current based on what you know or what you're doing right now. So that's a great question, and a good reminder for everyone that if there are changes in the number of meals you're averaging, serving on average per day, or anything that changes regarding your meal service or distributions gets changed over time, which is possible because this is a learning process and you might figure out smarter, more efficient ways to do things. We want to make sure that you know to go ahead and make revisions and submit those applications for reapproval to us. Thank you. Great question.
The next question is, can we use both the meals to everyone or meals to you and the SFSP program, the summer programs? My district is pretty open, and some families live 30 or more miles away from the open site and are not coming in for that reason. Can we try and reach the other families with the other program? From my understanding, the Meals to You program is only for students eligible for free and reduced meals. And it is an application process where you would complete the application for Meals to You. You would have to provide information on what households would be interested in receiving those meals, what students, only for free and reduced. And then that has to come to the state agency for approval, and then it has to be approved by Meals to You. So it is a process that if that's something that you're thinking down the road that you might want to implement, then you need to get started on that process. Now, as far as your question, can you do both programs? I'm going to let Sharon address that. One or the other, isn't it?
No, we actually had this question from someone else and sent it to the regional office, and they can operate a site in town and be open for the community children and still participate in the Meals to You program for the children that live in the rural areas. So it is possible to participate in both programs.
Super.
However, the clincher is that it's not sure, or the USDA is not sure if the program will be available for normal summer operations. So the May through August time period, whether that Meals to You program will be offered nationwide is questionable. It is available during the pandemic period. So we're thinking, hopefully through June 30th. But after that, it's questionable whether it will be available for regular summer program operation.
Andrea has a question about meal pattern for sack lunches. She asks, are we required to give 2 of one or the other fruits or vegetables, right? So if you're utilizing the summer food service program and its meal pattern, you are required to give 2 separate fruit and or vegetable items. The total quantity for both of them needs to be 3/4 of a cup. You could offer 2 different fruit items. So like a small banana and a small banana and like a small apple or something like that. Things you couldn't do would be like applesauce and apple slices. So 2 different items, as long as they're not from the same food, right? Food group is different, but component group is different, but not the same food. And if the total quantity is 3/4 of a cup, then that is okay.
I'll take the next question. Do we need to fill out daily production sheets every day? We started with 56 lunches the first day and are now up to 225 for lunch and 220 for breakfast. Thank you for letting us still feed the children. Well, I thank you for feeding the children. In answer to your question, daily production records are a requirement of the program. It's your documentation that you've met meal pattern and that you've produced enough food for the number of meals that you're claiming for reimbursement. So we would expect to see a production record for breakfast. We would expect to see a production record for lunch, and they need to be completed daily and complete information. Without that documentation, then those meals aren't reimbursable because you don't have the documentation you've met meal patterns. So the answer is a definite yes.
Hey, Sean, can you look at Andrea's kind of like follow-up and make sure that I gave correct advice to her? Currently, we're giving 2 vegetables and 1 fruit. And then with the high school meals, they're getting 2 veggies and a fruit plus a juice. So that's probably beyond the minimum requirements, and that would be fine.
Andrea, I assume you're operating the summer food service meal pattern. If you're operating the summer food service meal pattern, it is 2 different fruits and or vegetables to equal a 3/4 cup serving. If you're continuing your operation through the school meals program, then it's the school meals meal pattern, which is the 1 cup of veggies for high school 9 through 12 and 1 cup of fruit for 9 through 12. So it's a lot larger serving size for fruits and veggies if you're following the school lunch meal pattern. You might consider applying for the area eligibility waiver and being an open site, which would allow you to operate the summer food service program, allowing you to do that meal pattern, which is a much easier meal pattern to meet.
Katie or Sean, can you go back to that previous question from the superintendent regarding the waiver,
I saw that.
meal pattern waiver?
For every, chime in, Sean, Sharon, anyone, Marianne, for every time that you experience or have a meal where you can't provide all the required components, you would need to submit that into the form that we have available. So for each instance that takes place, we have you report exactly what component you were not able to provide, along with the duration of that event. So if it's for a day or two, we want you to tell us that information. For example, if milk didn't come in on 1 week and then 2 weeks later the same thing happens, is that 2? Yes, that would be 2 separate requests, or times you would notify us that you utilized that waiver for meal pattern.
Right. And you can't complete it ahead of time. You can't anticipate being short. I can't say today, well, maybe a month from now I won't be able to get an item. So you can't anticipate that. So it's when the incident happens, you complete the waiver.
And Lynn had a follow-up comment, and I'm glad that she brought it up. She's saying, I don't know what you're going to ask me on the next slide unless I put my information in. So I'm not on the next slide, on the next page of the application for the area eligibility waiver. I will work on seeing if I can fix that so you can see everything the first time you go in and try to just see what you need to have ready to go. So I'm glad you brought that up, Lynn. I didn't think of that before, and I'll get that fixed. For Patty, hey Sean, can you, if they marked that they weren't going to sell to adults, then you can't, right? And I agree with that, because that's in the budget question, our section at the bottom of it.
Yes. If you have marked it, the program is intended for children. And, although you can sell to adults, the program is intended for children. And once again, I go back to all costs have to be taken back into the school meals program. It's a child nutrition program. And so, if you choose to provide meals for adults, it has to be the same meal you're providing for the kids in the grab and go.
Thank you, Sean. And Edith has a question about not being able to find the parent pickup waiver. And I'm going to paste it, the page you can find it on, in the comment box. I know it's going to be several questions down from where you actually asked it, Edith. But if you go to the page, I did that to someone privately. Hold on. Let's get this to everybody. Sorry about that. If you click on the link I just put in the chat box there, you'll scroll down a little bit and you'll see a section that includes all of the USDA memos. And it is in there. I just checked it. It's called the Parent Guardian Pickup with the date of 3/25/2020. So it should be there for you. Let me know if you still are unable to locate it.
So there's a question that says, our district's still just running a normal NSLP since we do not meet the 50% free and reduced. Do we still get to continue until June 30th? If not, what's the best option to continue? I think your best option to continue would be to apply for the area eligibility waiver, and then you would be allowed to operate as an open site and continue through that June 30th.
You'll just need to make sure that you complete the application process to operate the summer food service program. So that's one piece that our team can definitely help guide you through. I just want to make sure you know that even though you may be approved to utilize the waiver, you still have to complete the online application in the CNP system, which is the same spot that you complete your school lunch claims and application.
So just to clarify, if they complete the waiver request and they are an open site under the summer food service program, then they can continue operations through June 30th.
Oh, I'm glad you asked that because that contradicts what we said earlier, doesn't it? I think Sharon indicated we're waiting for, we need to dig a little bit deeper into how long through the summer, what the end date or expiration date of our approved waiver is. Is that right, Sharon?
Yes, I'm not sure. I know we were approved, but I'm not sure if they did state an expiration date based on the pandemic. So I do need to look into that, and we'll make sure we send that information out to everyone once I get it confirmed.
Yeah, we'll make sure we post that with the other area eligibility waiver information on the website too. So that's a great question, and we're glad that you asked. Sorry.
Sharon, there's a question on explain meals to you, and would you do that for us?
I will try. So the Meals to You program was a pilot that between a collaborative pilot between Baylor University in Texas and the USDA. And what it did was it worked in only 3 states. It was available in Alaska, Texas, and New Mexico. And what it does is it actually mails food, shelf-stable foods, to children in rural areas because it was difficult. Can you imagine Alaska and Texas trying to get kids meals with all the land that they have and the distance between towns. So it's a meal delivery service of shelf-stable items that's mailed directly to free and reduced children that enroll through their school district. And the box comes to the child, and my understanding is about 10 meals, 5 breakfasts, and 5 lunch, and it's delivered to their door. Sounds like a great program for rural areas, you know, that we really do suffer or struggle to try to get sites open or some way to deliver meals to those rural areas. And so it was a project that that USDA had offered through a grant process to Baylor University, and they're expanding it just for the pandemic portion to make sure that children have a secure supply of food during this pandemic time.
Sharon, is it just for students that are eligible for free and reduced meals?
That's correct.
And
so,
Teresa, yeah, sorry, go ahead.
So when the school applies, they go through an enrollment period, and they have to reach out to their free and reduced students, and they have to indicate whether or not they're interested in receiving the meals. And then there's a confirmation process that goes through. So any student that applies has got to be confirmed by the school that they are eligible for a free or reduced meal. So it would not serve population of paid children. It would just be free and reduced children in those rural areas.
Sharon, doesn't the school district itself have to be 50% or more free and reduced for starters?
That's correct.
No, I want to hold on.
Yes, go ahead, Katie.
Go ahead. No, you go.
No, you'll do better, I'm sure.
I don't know about that. We did ask that question, Marianne. That was our initial thought in reading the guidance that was issued. And I asked Joey at our regional office contact to clarify that. And he let me know that if you're a school that's choosing to operate a closed enrolled site through the SFSP, and at least half of the students who are enrolled to receive meals from you during your school's closure, that you would qualify to be able to apply to utilize the Meals to You program as a school. So then you could let your free and reduced eligible students know that that would be an option for them. So that's a really good point of clarification, Marianne. Anything to add to that, Sharon? Did I get that right?
I agree totally.
And Teresa had just a follow-up point of clarification that the Meals to You program mails the meals to the students. The school doesn't have any role to play in that, and that is correct.
I'll take the next question. Will we have to provide record of parents who are picking up meals without children?
No.
There is no, you
No.
not, but if that would be at the local level, if you wanted to keep track at the local level, you certainly could, but there isn't a requirement that we would be looking at that you would keep that record. You want to ensure that they're not picking up meals for children they don't have, or that they're picking up more than one meal per child. So they can't, you know, a lot of schools have implemented kind of a grab and go where cars come through and then they're handed the meals. You would want to ensure that that car didn't come back around and grab more meals like a second loop around. So that's, you know, just those types of things that that you just want to make sure that it's one meal per child. And if you're handing out, distributing many days of meals, which is fine, that is happening correctly. But if the district wants to keep some record, that's fine, but it's not a requirement. The next question is, so the school doesn't mail the food. Meals to You mails the food, and that is correct. There is a vendor that's associated with Meals to You, and that vendor sends the meals. So it has nothing to do with the school, and those meals aren't claimed for reimbursement. That is a service that is being provided, and the meals are sent from an approved vendor to the household. The next question is going back to meals. So if you give 4-ounce juice and a half a cup applesauce, that's okay that you are giving more. Well, that juice shouldn't be apple juice because that is the same food item in 2 different forms. So that's not okay, but you can give a 4-ounce orange juice and a half a cup of applesauce, and that is a cup serving. And it's fine to go over on servings. That 3/4 cup of 2 different fruits and or vegetables is a minimum quantity. You can serve more.
Roxanne's question about payment or reimbursement with Meals to You may have been handled because of the way we answered a previous question about it, but because the Meals to You program handles all parts of, you know, procuring the food and packaging it and getting it delivered to the homes, that would mean that there isn't a cost associated with it as far as from the school's perspective or school side. So there wouldn't be any payment or reimbursement considerations to make for those meals offered through that program.
It's been a great job with some fantastic questions have came through. Appreciate everyone's participation. We'll give an opportunity for a few more questions. We're at just a little over an hour from our start time. So we're looking to wrap up, but we're also want to make sure that all your questions have been answered. Sean or Katie, can you think of any last closing comments?
Just thank you to everyone for being out there and serving meals to kids. I know it's been a difficult time for everyone, but I think everyone's doing as good as they can. So Please contact our office with any questions, any concerns, anything after today's webinar, anytime through this process. We're here to help you and answer those questions that you might have.
We've had just a few more questions come in. There's one related to paras who want to deliver meals. Do we need any documentation? And I'm assuming they're delivering meals as part of instead of their work as a para. I'm not sure, Katie or Sean?
I was going to say, obviously, their time spent doing that would be an allowable cost to the against the reimbursement you receive through the meals served through the program. So if it were me, I probably would advise that you track their time doing that. If you wanted to be able to pay for their time spent delivering meals, utilize from the school food service account. But I'll let Sean or someone else also weigh in on that.
Well, yes, that's true. That would be an allowable cost for the time that it takes to deliver the meals. It's also that you want to make sure you're doing a point of service meal count. That's a requirement of the program, that you're actually counting that meal when that child is present with that full meal. And so if you're delivering, that point of service would be when you have delivered that meal to that household. So that's when you would indicate, yes, that meal has been served.
There's another great questions come through about, the idea that they're currently operating as the school's operating as a closed enrolled site, and they were at 43%, but certainly with all of the economic impact that they feel their free and reduced percentages have gone up. So I really feel one of the things, take home message from all that's happened with COVID is we know the unemployment, there's a lot more unemployment applications being done. There's a lot more SNAP benefits being applied for. And certainly encourage your families to submit an application if their circumstances have changed, because they can do that at any time throughout the school year, or any time that there is, anything that changes their financial situation. The good news there is that will also carry over for the first 30 days of operation into the next school year. So definitely want to encourage your families that haven't, that may have had that financial impact to submit a new application. And then also make sure you're checking your direct certification list, because as those new SNAP applications come through, we're still matching on a daily basis, and we'll match against your current enrollment. So you may have more students that are directly certified also for free meals. And then I would also encourage you to use the Area Eligibility Waiver so that you can get all those meals reimbursed free and not have to charge your students.
I would agree, Sharon, that if they're currently operating under the school lunch program or as a closed enrolled program, completing the application for the area eligibility waiver application is the way to go. That gives them the opportunity to feed children in their communities between the ages of 1 through 18.
Ken's question is about utilizing the Emergency Meals to You program. And so it's true that even though if your school lunch claims didn't demonstrate that half of your enrolled students qualified for free or reduced price meals, but if your enrollment, so to speak, to receive meals during your school closure did meet that 50% free or reduced eligible threshold, then yes, you could submit an application that would allow your free or reduced eligible students to order meals through that program.
Another benefit of applying for the area eligibility waiver, if you are operating under the school lunch program, is the rates of reimbursement under the summer food service program are much higher than the school meals program.
I don't see any more questions coming in.
Hey, Sharon or Katie, maybe with all of the questions about this Meals to You program, maybe you could send out that email again that talked about the specifics. You know, it included the menus, the types of foods that are being distributed. Maybe it'd just be a good idea to send that back out again, since there were so many questions.
Absolutely, we can do that. All right, I think that is it for questions. Thank you everyone for your work that you have done to feed Nebraska's children. If there's anything we can do for you at all, please reach out. We're all working remotely, but we all have phones and email and voicemail, and we can respond to any questions or concerns you have. Thanks again so much for all your hard work to feed Nebraska's children.